We are live. Hello,
Hey,
family. Let me check the chat, Vic. I want to see if we got anything. Uh, Hi, message. Okay, so you see at the bottom, can you see the chat? I'm going to see if we can type something.
yeah, there's a chat. Things it's private chat down at the bottom.
Right, the private chat, though, is different from the public. So, like, this is, hold on.
We're on.
Yes, we are live.
Hey guys, let me look up here because that's where the camera is, not down here.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about this. Okay, let's get into this today. Woo! Welcome back, guys. We've been on a little hiatus for a little bit, but today we come in straight with the at the closet conservative. Okay, do you got a crackhead in your family?
All of us do.
Okay,
If
wait
you black in America,
a minute. If you don't have a crackhead, what about a meth head?
that's for
You think
our,
it's
our
somebody?
white patriotic brothers and
Oh,
sisters.
come on in here, you guys. I don't care what color you are. You know what? Because everybody have a crackhead in their family, okay? And it's a crackhead that you know what? We pray for them, but we don't want them to visit us. And if they do come over, we use some gorilla glue
You
to hold
hide
it down.
stuff, right?
We gotta hold that
You
down to
got a
keep
thing
you
that's
afraid.
not locked down. Lord, I got some
Yeah,
stories I could definitely share.
so today, we're gonna really get into this. We're gonna get personal. We're gonna be telling you a few things of our experiences that we've faced in our lives concerning those who are in the Black community that are on drugs. It's a big problem in the Black community. And what's happening is not only just happening within their families, it's happening to the um, community at large. You having police incidents, George Floyd. A lot of things that happened with that was due to him being on drugs.
Right.
Um, but we're gonna get into that. With no further ado, I'm just gonna pass it right over to Kim because you know what? She got a whole profile that you guys will blow your mind today. It's
Trying
gonna
to tell you,
blow your
look, what you trying to say, sis? Like I have a lot of experience with drug abuse in the black community, and I would say yes, I do.
mind.
Um, this subject for us was near and dear to our heart because of course we're black and we're concerned about issues in the black community, and we have these discussions all the time. And just we were talking a couple of weeks ago and it just came up. I was sharing with Vic some of the issues I've had to deal with, drug addiction in my family very close to me. I can probably name 5 close family members that were addicted to crack back in the 80s. So and then especially now, you fast forward 30, 40 years, there's
Mhm.
still a stigma attached to the black community, like we're this big community of drug abusers.
Yeah.
So I found some interesting stats that I just wanted to share with you. But first, I just thought, like, let's say, give you the definition of what drug abuse actually is. So, in a nutshell, drug abuse is the irresponsible and recreational use of drugs, both legal and illegal. So think about that. The irresponsible and recreational, and I guess that's arguable. We can talk about that use of drugs, legal and illegal. Think about
Yeah.
it. A lot of people are addicted to prescription medications. Those are
Yes.
very legal.
Mm-hmm.
The fentanyl, the all the opioids, and the painkillers, the Xanax, the Valium, and Ambien. I could tell stories about that as well because I've had family members who are addicted, to prescription medication.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there's a difference in punishment based on the type of drug that's used. So,
Mhm.
and we're all familiar with the harsh punishments associated with prison terms, longer prison terms for crack use as opposed to powder cocaine use. And both are cocaine, but there's longer prison sentences for crack use. So I also found that research shows that Black Americans are less likely to have drug and alcohol problems than our non-white counterparts or non-white Americans. The highest use of alcohol is in the white, in the Caucasian, and the American Indian community. In the Black community, we're the highest number of marijuana users. Um, but statistically, we are lower. We have lower drug abuse problems, although we have our outcomes are worse by going into rehab. And so we can talk about that issue as well. I have a personal story about that. Big Nose, we talked about
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
You know, I was, you know, the height of the crack cocaine epidemic was in the 80s. You know,
yeah.
I was in my 20s in the 80s. So that whole decade, I saw destruction after destruction of families, close families, friends. I saw it up close and personal. And
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that I didn't get caught up in it myself. And like I share a little story with you, Vic. I think I told you. Did I tell you this story about my experience with trying crack cocaine? Now, y'all out there can
Ooh,
say I'm crazy. I was. You know, when you're in your 20s, you stupid. You take
yeah,
unnecessary risks. And that was me.
yeah.
You know, I wasn't
Absolutely.
married yet. I didn't have any children. I was in my early 20s, but I remember very specifically.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, this had to be the early 80s, maybe 82,
Okay.
83. I was 22,
Yeah.
23 years old, young, dumb. And I had family members who used crack regularly. And I was actually waiting for a family member for us to go out and go clubbing. And we were the same age. She was in the back room smoking with her mother,
Mm.
smoking crack. Now, she and I, because we grew up together, always did everything together. You know, we grew up together, went to school together, spent the night over each other's house, experimented together, you know, so we were very close. And she invited me to smoke
Mhm.
crack with her and her mom.
Really?
And me not thinking much of it, like, okay, you know, we had smoked marijuana before, we
Okay.
experimented before.
Uh,
This was in my younger days, you guys. I've, you know, thank God, you know, a guy looks over fools or babies. I'm not a baby. He looked over me during my foolishness. So I'm grateful for that. But I went in the room and hit the pipe. And I'll tell you guys right now, I just thank God that he scared me so bad. And the only thing I remember is walking out of the room, going and sitting on the couch and holding on for dear life because now my heart was beating real fast. I'm afraid that I'm about to have a heart attack. So, you know, if I'm afraid, the adrenaline is rushing too. That's not making it any better. And
yeah.
I held onto that couch for dear life, like I was on a roller coaster, and I was praying to God so hard. I was like, God, if you let me come down, I
Mhm.
promise that I will never, ever do that again. And I'm going to tell you right now, God is my witness. I kept that promise to him.
But you know what about with
Um,
me, Kim? Let me just interject with you there.
yeah,
I I use my vocals because I sang. So I was afraid to use alcohol.
yeah,
I was afraid to use drugs. I was afraid because it was just basically I knew it was a gift. And I I I I
so
would
you were cognizant of
yeah,
not
and I didn't want to lose that
destroying your
gift.
gift.
I didn't
Yes.
want to destroy it. So I that's what kept me away from using any type of drug.
Yeah.
That fear, that one fear of losing that talent of being able to sing. I
Yeah.
didn't want to destroy it with alcohol, and a lot of singers did. They destroy their vocal cords with alcohol and drugs.
Well,
You
you
know.
know, when you think about it, think about Whitney Houston. You
Mhm.
know, like towards the end of her, you know, you talking about a gift.
Yes,
But towards the end of her career, she struggled
yes,
with hitting some of those notes she was
yeah,
hitting earlier. I remember that.
yeah.
And you know, smoking all of that crack and you know doing those
Mhm.
drugs, they eventually will catch up with you. So kudos to you. I unfortunately I didn't have that type of grounding talent to keep me from being stupid and experimenting. But thank God
Yeah.
that I don't have an addict. Well, I do. Well, I want to say I don't have an addictive personality because my thing is I hate feeling out of control. So if something, and that's what that made me feel like, and it was so scary, and I just didn't. I was afraid,
But
and
you
I
know,
said,
your chemical makeup, you
hmm
know, also can help you know whether or not medically, if you are uh, that type of makeup to, if you use the drug, you would automatically become addicted to it. So if your father was an
exactly,
alcoholic and he fought with alcohol his
yeah,
whole entire life, and this is what you saw in your home as a young person, you would try to shy away from that, stay away from that, because you know that's part of your DNA.
yeah.
That's part of your makeup, you know,
But
drugs
you know
and
what's ironic, Vic, is that my mother, and that's probably what saved me a lot too, because
mhm,
this same family member used to get high with all of the younger people,
mm,
as teenagers. And unfortunately, I think it affected her children when they
mhm,
got older, because, one, God rest her soul, has already passed away. So my
okay.
auntie passed away and her daughter did, but her son is still addicted to, crack now. I think he's in recovery, but this is something that's been going on since he was like 15 or 16. He's almost 60 now. So it's been a lifelong battle. That
But
drug
think
addiction.
about it, it keeps going, and we don't talk about it in the Black community. We don't talk
Yeah.
about it. We just hide it. Like you said, she was,
Well, we had a lot of stuff in the Black community,
you know,
unfortunately.
you like you were saying that her mother introduced her to the drug. I mean, like, come on.
And my mama didn't play that. That's probably what saved me too.
But
My
do you
mama,
see what I'm
I
saying?
was more scared of my mother.
As a mom, I would never do that to my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would never, you know, but in our community, this is what's going on, but nobody talks about it, and it's like taboo. A lot of things is taboo, you know.
Hmm.
Incest taboo. It's
Sexual abuse, which is very
yes.
prevalent in the Black community, which is a whole nother subject
Oh,
we can talk about.
I mean, it's a psychological thing that we have to become healed from, and that only way that's going to be done and achieved is by um I'm sorry, getting a psychiatrist.
Yes,
There's
get
a
some therapy. Let me ask you this, sis, though. Do you think that, and I'm not one big on, victimhood and making excuses for stuff, but I think there could still be a lot of psychological damage
Mhm.
from slavery. Even though this is what I always say too, it's to me evident that we can overcome that, because right after we were freed for 100 years, we did very well.
We thrive.
uh, you're right. We thrived during Reconstruction. We thrived through Jim Crow and stuff. So I don't know what it is now that has us psychologically ill. Well, I think I do, but that's
I
another.
just think, you know, and people may say I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm a teacher. I'm a retired teacher. But coming from a family of 9, you know, you see a lot of things in a family unit. We were a tight family unit.
Yeah,
One father, one mother. There was no incest going on. I had 2 brothers. There was no incest going on. My
yeah.
father didn't come into my room or my sister's room late at night. That was just something that no. And so it's just like, where is all of this coming from?
Well, it happens because, I mean, if we want to get personal, that happened to me. My stepfather sexually molested me. He came into my room at night. I was an 8-year-old girl. So it's and see, thank God for my mother.
Hmm.
Counseling, therapy,
Yeah.
all of that. She believed in that.
But
And
see,
then
people don't like, we don't like therapy. Girl, you know we don't like therapists.
yeah. And then
You know,
see, this is what I'm
I ain't
telling you.
saying
I'm so grateful for my mother, because she was an advocate for me. And
yeah.
and if you guys are watching, please throw a comment in the chat. I see we got at least a couple of people watching. Let's see you in the chat, and make sure you like and share and subscribe to the channel. We
Because we're gonna
appreciate you
get in
joining
depth with
us.
here. This is gonna get,
Yeah,
and if they
yeah,
tag people, it's gonna get deep. It's gonna things that you're gonna be very shocked to hear. that which goes on in our communities, things that we keep a secret and we don't say. And then what happens is it goes on to the next generation. And what happens is a lot of people say, why are Black women angry? No, all Black women are not angry. I'm sorry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry at how my life turned out, how my life is still evolving as I'm growing each year. No, I'm happy how my life turned out. I'm happy that I was put in a household with Timothy and Esther Thomas. I'm happy. I thank God for them, and my ancestors. I thank God for them. But we still have to face the issues that's in our community. And these things are in our community. And it's been taught through decades, centuries, how to keep our mouths quiet when there is a tragedy. Snitches get stitches.
Right. But let me share an interesting statistic too, because while we're talking about substance abuse, I found something that talked about, I went to addictiontreatment.org, and you can go there if you guys want to. But despite many depictions, recent research is contradictory that a lot of Black Americans or African Americans are less likely to have drug and alcohol problems than Caucasian Americans, those of mixed race, and Native Americans. While other studies claim that substance abuse is greater in the African American community, it's only greater in the African American community amongst cocaine use. And then they included powder cocaine in that, which is more prevalent in the Caucasian community. It's more prevalent in cocaine use in the Black community because of crack. And then it's even higher amongst Black males. So that's really where the issue is, even though use is down. And the high Black folk, by and large, are the biggest weed smokers. I mean, we just are. I mean, I don't partake, but I know a lot of people who do. And for me, with drug abuse and stuff, and I see more harm when we talk about drug addiction and drug abuse come from alcohol use than I do from marijuana use.
Yeah.
I don't see weed heads getting behind the wheel of a car and killing people, and unfortunately, you'll see that with alcohol. And alcohol is legal, so I guess that's an argument can be made for the morality of it or whatever you want to, but. Hey, Miss Valerie, how are you? We got Miss Valerie Johnson with us. Thank you. She said, hey, ladies, excellent content. Thank you. But from that standpoint, stereotypically, they're saying that we are perceived as the highest, having the highest drug abuse in America when, as a matter of fact, hold on. African Americans make up 12.5% of illicit drug use, but are 33% of drug incarcerations. Think about that, right? And we were talking about this too, Vic, is that because of the high incarceration rate, so to get therapy, see, it's like a catch-22. So if you want therapy, you got to go self-report, right? But if you self-report, you're taking a risk of going to jail. So it has an impact on us not to get treatment. That's why we have worse outcomes too. That could be one of the contributing factors.
But the thing about it is that you have soccer moms in suburbia who did the same thing.
But remember, I just made the point that the penalty for crack cocaine use is higher than the penalty for powder cocaine. And it's almost as though, now we talked about this too, and I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but after a while, it's too many coincidences to be a conspiracy. So why were drug laws passed that impacted use of crack cocaine and not the use of powder cocaine more so, that had carried heavier penalties, which affected the Black community? That's why we had that 33% of drug incarcerations and you only 12% of the population. It almost seems like it's targeted.
Remember, powder cocaine was a very big thing in New York City for Wall Street. A lot of Wall Street executives, stopped people were using powder cocaine. That was a big thing in the 80s for a lot of white collar workers.
Yeah,
It
they're
was
supposed to consider the white collar drug, and that's yeah, okay.
I guess if you can afford it, crack was cheap, $5.
Right,
Remember, it
right,
was
girl.
$5
Yes,
for a hit high. $5.
girl.
Compared
Let me
to
tell you another story. It's
oh
funny
Lord.
you would say that. Back in
Mhm.
the day, I'm getting ready to give y'all a little bit of education on the lingo in the streets back in the day, back in the 80s about crack cocaine. We know that a lot of times, unfortunately, when women get involved in drug abuse or drug addiction,
Mhm.
they prostitute or sell their
Yeah,
bodies
yes.
for the drug, right?
Yeah.
So back in the day, we used to call women who perform sex acts for crack strawberries. so so if you were addicted, a female back in the day addicted to crack,
Mhm.
and you performed sexual acts, and a lot of times it wasn't even intercourse, it was the other thing, right? You
Yeah.
would do that a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of women would do that for a $5 piece of crack.
But the
Just,
thing about it is, but another thing is that I want to get real with this because a lot of people don't know that within our community we had a lot of different cultures coming into our community to purchase crack. We had people of all different nationalities coming in our communities, um, soliciting for a hit, for a
mhm,
sexual act.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So I mean, let's break it down and let's
Call a spade a spade.
let's talk about this. And a lot of black women were contracting HIV through that, and a
And I
lot of
saw
senior
that.
citizens,
Yes,
a lot of senior
yes.
citizens that were coming into those areas that were picking up prostitutes for that a sexual act in exchange was taking it back home to their wives. So the senior citizen community were hit very hard with HIV. They didn't talk too much about it, but it happened, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That was another
that
interesting statistic that I found, is that sexually transmitted diseases are higher amongst people who are addicted to drugs because, number one, they're less prone to use protection. When back in the day when you had these females and stuff that that we affectionately call strawberries, that
yeah.
were performing sex acts. Also, IV drug use. Okay, so illicit drug use, which was a lot of and I had it in my family. There were
Yeah.
members of my family and friends who shot up heroin.
Mhm.
When I first moved here to Charlotte, being in the insurance business and doing field underwriting, there are a lot of females
Mhm.
here in Charlotte that are HIV positive, and they're heterosexuals.
Mm, mm,
Um, and that they attribute that, statistically, they attribute that to illicit drug use or drug abuse. And, when you're in that state of mind, all you're concerned about is getting a high,
Identity.
right? You
Yeah.
ain't
Yeah.
concerned about,
Yeah.
protection or anything. All I want to do is get a high.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, the drug abuse and I don't know why it just affects us more.
The black women.
Yeah, and psychologically as a people, we're sick. We're mentally sick. And then, drugs is that outlet, right? To escape that pain. That's what I noticed,
Mhm.
especially when I was married and my husband was addicted to crack cocaine. I knew his underlying issues were with his father,
Uh-huh.
lack of he was a very competent,
Uh-huh.
a good man.
Uh-huh.
You take away the drug abuse, he's a
Yeah.
good man.
Yeah.
Um, Great father, even to this day. My kids love their dad and they have a great relationship. But I noticed that his drug abuse was to cover up some of the pain from how he felt maybe inadequate, his relationship with his dad. He struggled with um he had a disability like dyslexia or something.
Okay. Oh, I
But
know
he
that.
wasn't dumb by any reason,
No,
by
he just
any
said
stretch
he
of the
read.
imagination.
I know.
But right, he had difficulty with the dyslexia,
Mhm.
reading.
Read it.
Um,
Mhm.
and so And then, of course, in the Black community, we don't want to go get help for it.
Yeah.
So, as much as I try to encourage him,
Yeah.
because it can be dyslexia can be treated.
Yes.
Um, he was very proud and felt like it meant he was somehow less than. And so I know in a lot of ways that, drug abuse, and then I really believe his underlying issue was alcoholism. That's the other thing too, because sometimes, they call what we have what you call gateway drugs that lead to other drugs. And some
Yes.
alcohol, they say that these can be gateway
Yes.
drugs that lead to
Yes.
heavier drug use. Yeah.
Yes. And that's the reason why I'm not too favorable with this CBD for young people being able to have weed and all that stuff, making it accessible for them to get at such a young age.
Yeah.
What I want to piggyback off with the dyslexia that you were talking about. It was dyslexia was really brought to the forefront by Bill Cosby because his son Emmett had dyslexia.
The one that was killed. Yeah.
That is
okay.
correct. He had dyslexia, and that's what brought it to the forefront with other Black boys that had dyslexia at that time in the 80s, because a lot of young boys were fighting with reading and stuff like that. They were good in math, they were good in science, but solving the formulas, being able to read it, writing it backwards. So Bill Cosby brought a lot of attention to that disorder, which is really under the spectrum of autism.
Right.
Other one, yeah.
Right. So, and then you got to think about it, because especially we talk about therapy and counseling in the Black community. One of the things I found, when looking up this topic was that there is a difference between counseling and therapy. Let me see if I can find that right quick and share it with you guys. Hold on.
We don't like psychiatrists. First of all, I ain't crazy. You know what? No, you may not be crazy. If you're crazy, if you need help and you don't seek out help professionally, okay?
Yeah.
Because what happens is people sometimes will say, I'm not crazy, but instead of you being able to talk to somebody, whether it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, a counselor, someone to talk out your emotions, what you do instead, you go out and you take a gun and you kill somebody.
Unfortunately. And I don't know if you guys can see the graphic that I have up, but there is a little bit of a difference between counseling and therapy. We use the word interchangeably, right? Yeah. Look, in the Black community, it's a bad word. I hate to say it, but it's right. Counseling or therapy, because I think in the Black community, we think of it as being weak, but it's actually the opposite. If you understand that you need help and you have the courage to go seek it, it takes more courage to seek the help than to deny it, right?
Yeah.
So counseling involves working with a mental health counselor or clinical health counselor on a specific issue for a limited amount of time. Okay. So counseling can help with a marriage. You can see a marriage counselor to, address certain issues, right? But therapy can be more long-term and focuses on the individual, how you see yourself and the world, your thoughts, your behaviors, as well as your underlying patterns. Yes. So I would say, the counseling, and then there's different forms of treatment. And that was the other thing that we were going to touch on, is that with the different forms of treatment, we see, like I said, we see counseling and therapy as bad, but I would go so far as to say, especially because I believe in the Black community, we just have a lot of issues, and it's probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to get into some type of ongoing therapy, not just counseling. So,
and the thing about it is, I've had when I got a divorce, I had counseling. I had to get counseling because I'm coming out of a marriage after over 25 years. And I'm like saying, I got to get my head together.
Right.
I don't want to bring that into a new relationship with someone else with old baggage, old emotions. So, I'm a big advocate. Listen, if you need to talk to somebody so that you can walk upright, do it. You know, do what you need
Right.
to do to make yourself a
Right.
whole individual, and never mind the sidebars from
Hmm.
other
Or the
people telling
stigmas,
you,
right? It's
yeah,
stigmas,
get
right?
what you need. And this is the reason why I said, the reason why I believe that we have so much um uh uh killing and issues within the Black community is because we don't know how to basically express ourselves
To cope, right? With,
emotionally,
yes.
to reach
Hmm.
out for help. Who do we reach out for? You know, it's always church, 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 but sometimes the church don't, it's not the only answer.
Oh, that's a
It's
great
not the
point.
only answer.
That's a great point, sis,
It's not.
because Black folks, that's the first place we run. Look, when I talk to people who are
Mhm.
having issues, but the Lord gonna help me, He gonna take care of me, or they going to the pastor, talking to the pastor about stuff, and that's all fine and good, but that's a collective. You
Yeah,
know, that's like at a group level. You may
yeah,
have just like with the definition of therapy. You may
yeah,
have some, the pastor may be good for your marriage counseling,
yeah,
before, but as the individual, the individual needs that one-on-one with a therapist who can help you deal with your underlying issues and problems and stuff that you
absolutely.
may have. So that's a great point, is that, and
Mhm,
saw that when I was researching that
mhm.
Black folks tend to run to the church
To the church, yeah.
when we have issues, and then we ain't gonna even talk about the church. We're gonna do some stuff about that too, right, sissy?
Oh, yes,
About
we
the
are.
church.
But the thing about it is that our counterparts, they run to psychologists. They take their kids to be evaluated when they see behaviors that's not normal. You know what I'm saying? When you have a child that's hitting his sister upside her head, why is
Right,
he doing that? Where did he get
right.
that from? And if it's a constant thing, there's something
There's
wrong.
something wrong,
Yeah,
right?
my dad would my brother, when we would get into like a tiff or whatnot, he would, when my brother would hit my sister or one of us, um my dad said, don't you ever hit your sister again. Don't you put your hand on
I'm
her.
gonna beat your
You know,
behind. Now, Valerie said
it was my
most
dad was a
pastors,
pastor. No, my dad
yeah.
was a pastor, and my brother went to counseling.
Okay.
We
Well,
had
that's what she's
group
saying. Valerie
sessions.
is saying most pastors are able to handle mental health behaviors and or illnesses. But I push back on you a little bit on that, Valerie, because they have to be licensed. Don't they have to be clinically licensed to do that? And I know a lot of them are. But then you get these street pastors who ain't. They just got a calling from the Lord, and they standing up in the pulpit
Yeah,
because they got a calling from the Lord.
and they have
Oh, she
more
say are
problems,
not.
and they
Oh,
have
she
more
put are not
problems in their
able.
house.
Okay.
They have more problems in their house than you have in your house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Girl,
So,
look, we can look at the current state of the Black church today,
oh, okay.
and they some of the most, they need the most help. The stuff the frauds that they perpetrating on the flock. Yeah, I see that, Valerie. Valerie says she meant to say they are not capable
Yeah, then,
of handling.
and what it is that, you know, it's very sad, because this is the avenue that us Black people are going to.
Yes,
And
in
look at the
mass.
centuries, we still are not being healed. They're still not
Yes.
healed. And what's happening is, what's wrong? You need another source.
Yeah.
Try something different. It ain't gonna hurt you. You've been trying the same thing and it ain't working. So what does that mean? It means for you to try something again. It's not gonna hurt you. It won't. You will only
Yeah.
gain from it.
Well, you know what? And now I'm gonna tell you too. I was looking at the 12-step program, right?
Huh?
I was looking at 12 steps because a good program, and I was reading this too. So, because when it comes to drug addiction in the Black community, number one, good news to me is not as prevalent as they
Mhm.
try to make it, right? That there
Okay.
are other groups of people that have a bigger problem than we do. But the bad news is that we're incarcerated at a higher level for drug, where there's, and it just doesn't make sense to me either to incarcerate somebody who's addicted to drugs unless they're committing crimes, right? So we're incarcerated at a higher level. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Remember, I was making the point that
Yeah.
if you self-report, now you're concerned as a Black person, you're concerned about going to jail because we're 33% of the prison population for drug
Yeah.
crimes, right?
Yeah.
Even though we're only 12 and like 13% of the population. So, but I found that and then our outcomes for drug treatment are worse. And I think it's because of the stigma that we have attached to, getting therapy and counseling. But I was looking at the 12-step program.
Uh-huh.
And it still seems to me, and you and I have been on this spiritual journey, and some of the things that we're discovering about being spiritual versus being religious is like you take ownership of yourself, right? You take ownership of your own life, of your own spirituality, or your own well-being, your spiritual well-being and stuff like that. And I looked at the 12 steps a little different this time from that prism. And one of the things I noticed, the first thing it says is that step 1 says we are powerless. Let me see if I'm going to share the screen right quick so you guys can see this too. Did I share it? Yep. Hold on. Let me get there. Okay. Share. And hopefully you guys can see it a little bit. It's kind of, so the first one is we admit we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. I agree with that. Your lives haven't become unmanageable, but you're not powerless.
No.
I look at that a little bit different now.
But that's when you have to take ownership of your mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you can't change it until you take ownership of it, right?
Take ownership of it. But what it sounds as if like you're putting it on a drug that has no response to your claim. You understand what I'm saying? So
yeah, because you're using the drug. The drug ain't twisting your arm.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
It ain't jumping in your mouth. It ain't jumping in your arm.
Yeah.
So I'm just now. I know there's a lot of success with the 12-step program. I am not in any way saying don't try it.
Yes.
Try it. Because I feel like if it works for you, amen. If you can lay with it, I can sit with it. But I'm looking at the steps a little bit different because I'm coming more from a spiritual aspect instead of a religious aspect, right? At step 2 is come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, but that power is in you.
Yeah. If you take
that power is in you. Yes.
And see, that's taking ownership of your drug use.
And I think that I'm looking at it a little bit different. And I know a lot of people have been saved by that. And I'm not trying to say don't ever do the 12. As a matter of fact, do something. If you're addicted to drugs out here, do something. Get into therapy, counseling, a 12-step program. Look, when my husband was addicted and going to Al-Anon meetings, well, they have different ones. They have Alcoholics Anonymous, they have Narcotics Anonymous, they have Cocaine Anonymous, they got all kinds of 12-step programs. And then they have the program for the family members, which is called Al-Anon.
Yes.
And that was very helpful for me, going to those meetings, because then you don't feel like you're by yourself. You got people who going through.
It was made to do that. It was meant to.
Exactly. It's a great support system. And that's the other thing with the 12-step program. It's a great support system because it helps you to see that you are not by yourself. Because sometimes when you're in the throes of addiction at its height, it can seem like nobody else is going through it but you.
And the thing about it is too, with the Black community, because this is what we're focusing on, is the Black community. We have been taught snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
And so you can go to a relative house and you just had a fight with your husband, your boyfriend. He beats you upside your head. And what you're teaching even the children not to tell what happens inside. So this is what I'm saying. We have to get beyond that stigma. We have to talk about how do we get unstuck? Because see, what I see right now, we are stuck. The Black community is stuck. And let me tell you something. They can have all the programs in the world. They can give them all the free money they want to give them. We're still going to come back to this point. How does the Black community become unstuck? because as time goes on, we keep destroying the next generation. It's the same, people are doing the same things over and over and over again. And aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of that old way? Do you want another way? So I
Yeah.
think that's where we have to go.
And I think too, Vic, for those of us who are more seasoned and more who have a little more wisdom and been around for a while, and and this has really been, tugging at my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And what I just feel like we have to get this word out there, and thank God for this platform. This is one way to do it, by talking about it openly, but even what we can do, like in our own neighborhoods,
Yeah.
like with your next door neighbors and stuff like that. I know, a lot of people want to save the world, but save your own little corner of the world, like work where you are, like,
Yeah.
I don't know where I heard this before, but grow where you're planted, right?
Yes.
Grow where you're planted. You know, um, all of us are not Malcolm X's and Martin Luther King's and stuff like that, but we can be in our own little world
Yeah.
and create and be that resource
Yeah.
um for people in our own little world, those closest to us. What's first start with self, right?
Yeah.
I think we got to start with self and making sure we're healed
Yeah.
and making sure that
we-
we're well.
Mhm.
And then, because you got to say, just like it, I follow a guy online. He talks about, he uses this analogy all the time.
Mhm.
When you're on the airplane
Mhm.
and the flight attendant is giving instructions in case of an emergency,
Yeah. Mhm.
and when the airbags drop down with the mask, put your mask on
First.
first,
Heal
and
yourself
then
first.
help somebody else,
Yeah.
right? Or help the child,
Yeah.
because if you dead, you can't help nobody else, right? So I think it's important that we continue to have these conversations and educate ourselves
Yeah.
about. But what I was saying right quick too, I want to get back to this. A good, effective counseling program has three components. It
Mhm.
has the detox. I've seen detox.
Okay.
You go through withdrawals, especially like if you're on heroin or something like that, your body develops a dependence on it. And
Yeah.
if you stop using it, that's what they had back in
You
the day.
die.
They had these. I don't know if you remember. They had these methadone.
Yeah. Mental
Um,
clinics. Oh yes, I do know. I
yes.
remember this.
So they took you off of heroin, but they put you on methadone, right? So they
Yeah.
had to substitute the one drug for another. So detox is one component of treatment. Then you have therapy, therapy to counseling. Well, it specifically said therapy, which I think if you have an addiction problem, it's not a bad idea to have a lifelong therapist. Initially, it could be intensive therapy, right? But then after that, you can, once you've figured it out and you can move through life effectively, maybe checking in with your therapist once a month,
And
semi-annually or
accountability too.
annually.
Even having an accountability partner other than
Yeah.
your therapist. Like, because these are the, because my thing was, when we decided to do this particular show here, this subject, my focus was on women, Black women, because we don't get enough um uh attention when it comes down to certain things as Black women
Okay.
with health.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. um
Such as.
just like drug health, mental health, um regular, just OBGYN, just regular medical health. we
Mm-hmm.
don't we don't talk about these issues as Black women. We don't discuss that, that's not the real terminology of your body part. And don't teach your children that, because that's not the name of that body part. There's
Ooh,
so
I got
many,
some interesting names for that body part. I mean, I knew the real name, but
but no, I'm just saying, when you're teaching children, you want them to learn, because they grow up to be women, and you want them to be informed about themselves. And when you're informed about yourself, what happens is, from your inward knowledge, it pushes outward on how you want to be treated, by others and how you treat yourself. And
Yeah.
that all starts from a good structure of knowing what your body is, what part is your body.
Yeah.
Understand everything. I understand there's a lot of religious people, but Jesus is not going to wash this away. I'm sorry. Jesus put us on live right now just to help our Black community to deal with these issues, because we're not dealing with these issues. And I'm
So
going in circles.
so what do you think? I mean, let's talk about some solutions, because obviously this is a problem, but I was encouraged to learn that um we're not the big culprits like we're portrayed stereotypically, right? So I was encouraged to know that. That doesn't mean we don't have a problem.
Uh-huh.
But the stereotype that Black folks use drugs at a higher level than anybody else is a lie. So I was encouraged to learn that. But however, with the bad outcomes or the less than desirable outcomes after therapy. Oh, and the other thing with therapy was the detox of therapy and aftercare, which is the important part too, because when my ex-husband got out of, like, if as long as he was inpatient, that 30 days, he was strong. He was going to meetings every day. He was monitored. He didn't have access to drugs. He was good.
Okay.
But the minute he came out of that inpatient and back into the real world,
Okay. He was
without some sort of accountability. Now, he did the 12, he would come out and join a 12-step program.
okay.
And they had a saying, 90 meetings in 90 days,
Okay.
where you would go to a meeting every night for 3 months. They had all of that, which was good. But you got to think about long-term aftercare. Right, like just the 3 months, because the world still spins. There's still crack in the world. There's still drugs. There's still all of this stuff. That stuff ain't gonna stop happening. So the addict has to find a way to still operate in this world with their addiction, and figure out how to navigate in this world. So aftercare is a very important part of it.
And
So
about it, even with the aftercare, you were talking about your husband, but because you were the wife, you had children. Your children still had some type of support from you as being the caregiver,
the stable. Yes. Yeah.
And the thing about it is that a lot of the times it's the woman with the stability, or the woman using drugs, the children. Then you still have children. And so what you're showing the children is that same perpetuating disease, another generation of that same perpetuating disease. So this is the reason why I'm like saying, how can we as the Black community, okay, how can we educate the Black community in healing themselves?
Right.
Because let me tell you something. I loved our president, our former president, but we're still sick.
Yeah. Well, one person can't fix
decades worth of.
I think that's part of the problem too in our community. Like, we look to this one savior. Jesus gonna save everything. I ain't no shade on Christians. I'm not. Martin Luther King gonna fix everything. But look what happened. He's just a man, just like everybody else. He got killed. Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was one person.
Yeah.
We have to look to ourselves. That's why I love spirituality, because it puts the power and the control back on me.
Yeah.
And I have to make decisions. And it gives me the tools to do it too. But I have to become self-reflective. In that way, I think the 12-step programs does make you become self-reflective, but it still, I don't think, goes far enough to tell you that you have the power to change, that it's not some power outside of you that's changing you, that it's you being self-reflective. Because the other steps talk about accountability, talk about righting wrongs.
Yeah.
Like you got to go through the
Yeah.
steps to do that. That's where
Yeah.
you're taking
Oh,
ownership.
I'm waiting for. I'm waiting on Jesus to deliver. No, no, no. You waiting for yourself to get up, to make a step and make a phone call and say, "Listen, I have an addiction problem and I need some help because I can't do it on my own anymore."
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
what do
But
I
that's
gotta
still you
do?
taking
It's still you
ownership
taking ownership.
and taking the step to get well.
Yes. And if you
Right.
think that Jesus is going to do that for you, you're going to be sitting there another 2, 3, 4 years with the same addiction. You have to take on the responsibility that I am the drug user. And because I'm the drug user, I have to heal myself from this drug that I am taking. Okay, step two. Who do I got to go to in order for that to happen? Where do I go? Give me a list of people that I can go. Because if you
Yeah.
don't go to that next step, you're still at the first phase. Your first phase is still you. So
Yeah.
you have to say, okay, I'm past me. I need to get to
Hmm.
phase two. What do I
Well,
do?
you know what? And I know I've been talking about statistics and the research and stuff, but even on a personal level, because I've shared with you,
Mhm.
I got a lot of stories I could share about, like even drug abuse in my own family and my own experimentation and stuff. But even like what I saw, especially in the 80s during the height of the crack
Okay.
um you know, epidemic,
Mhm.
was that as a community, we were very accepting of the crack abuse. You know what I'm saying? Like to a point where we almost in our codependency, those of us, who had family members or whatever, almost made it like it was okay. Like
Or joke.
I
I saw people laughing. You see, this is what I'm saying. There is a sickness. You see someone strung out on a drug that could take them out of their life. They take their lives from them, and within the community, we saw them how they straggled through the street. I mean, like as I got older, thank God, my dad moved us out before it got really bad, really bad that way. But I would go back and visit friends, and I remember.
honey, I lived in the crack neighborhoods
And,
coming
but
up in the 80s. So
but I
I
went
know.
back to the neighborhood because I had friends there. I had
Yeah.
friends, and I'm looking at these young women that I used to know who were beautiful prior to them getting on drugs.
Starting to use, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me share the lunacy of the thinking back then. Well, I don't want to say lunacy because to me, a lot of crack addicts, if they had a lot of common sense and they were able to run game a lot. If you weren't hip to game, you was so. I remember, during the height of my husband's addiction,
Mm-hmm.
a family member came to me. Now, this family member was a crack addict too. So let me just and suggested that if I wanted to really be helpful to my husband, to allow him to use at home and at that time I just had one child, I just had my son. I think my son was about 3 years old. But like if I allowed him to use at home, then it would keep him out the streets because I'm telling you, it was nights
Mm-hmm.
me and my other family member, her husband, would go out looking for them because they're out smoking. They done disappeared. We ain't seen them for days. We in the neighborhood driving, trying to find them. I can share some stories. So, but this one family member said I should let them smoke at home, right? So I talked to my husband and said, look, okay, let's a truce. Let's have a truce, right? Because I'm telling you, girl, I was at my wit's end. So, so, child, look, my car done disappeared. The family car done disappeared because my husband has sold it to the crack dealer. Okay, so I can share some stories. So I mean, I look back, it wasn't funny then, but it's funny.
It's funny now because
Yeah,
you got healed from it.
I've gotten through it, right? And my children are fine. We're all fine. So, but that family member suggested. So when I talked to my husband about it, he said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, and I told you, it's only in the basement. Like here in the South, we don't have basements. We have basements up north in
Yeah,
Ohio.
yeah.
Right. So Only in the basement. You can't be up here in this house doing nothing like that. You go in the basement, do what you're gonna do, then bring your butt upstairs, with the rest of the family. Child, one night I remember I was asleep and I heard him come in. So I wake up and go to the door. I see a line of about two or three crackheads following him going into the basement to get. I was like, "Oh hell no, we we not about to have this." No, no,
Oh God.
no.
Oh
So,
God.
needless to say, I
Wow.
shut that down because I had a 3-year-old son. I'm not having crackheads. That was for you. But see, that's the unfortunate thing is that
Mm,
crack was so powerful
yeah.
that it took what was ordinarily a good man and took away his common sense. Do you know what I'm saying? Took away his sense of,
Yeah. That's what.
you know, that provider who he was and that protector who he was.
Mhm.
That crack took that away.
It's
So,
funny you saying this because my brother. I mean, my brother in the 80s, after he graduated high school, he had a pack of friends that my father told him to stay away from. And he was able to he was making a lot of money in the industry. With my dad. My father had his business, and he worked with my dad. And I mean, at 19 he had a Subaru. At 19, the brand new, fresh off the lot, the car dealership. And as
uh-huh.
time went, he had so much money, he started, hanging out with his friends and partying. And, next thing we knew, he went from, well, it took a while because it's not instantaneous, but he got hooked on cocaine. He
Powder
cracked.
cocaine or crack?
No, he got the coke. It was the cocaine.
The powder kind.
Yes, it was a pound.
Okay.
But like once your money start going like this, you start going to the $5 kind. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm telling you,
We just say the
turned my
$5 can.
it turned
The
us up.
$5 holla.
It turned my family up down because we didn't know about this. My parents really sheltered us. I'm telling you, we were sheltered from a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. And when he became an addict, I mean, he was like a whole different person. He was a person I didn't even want to know. I didn't even want to see. I didn't want to know my brother because of his
Yeah.
addiction. But his only relief was he was incarcerated. His only relief, I tell you, I think it was a godsend. He was incarcerated for 2 years, and he became drug free
Yeah.
while he was
Yep.
in,
Sometimes that's what it takes
he
though.
was in college when he was out. He was in college as well as working. When he came out, he had his bachelor's and went on for his master's degree. I'm telling you, it was just like the prison system at that time was the best thing for him. It saved his life.
Yeah, he was forced into
Yes,
treatment.
he was.
Right, he didn't have no choice. He was forced to detox,
Yeah,
and a lot of times in prisons they do have some type of
yeah.
therapy or treatment
Hmm.
for it, and then you can't help but have aftercare. But I'm gonna tell you something though, it's easy to get drugs in prison too
Yeah.
nadays.
But he
So
came out. Listen, he came out clean. He went on to college and got his master's and graduated from the York College there in New York City. So I'm just
yeah,
like, yeah, sometimes there's a
he was one of the few that had a good outcome, and I'm not trying to be like God bless him, but usually our thing is we don't have the good
yeah.
outcomes. And I wanted to share this graphic right quick before we actually getting close to the end of this broadcast, but I wanted to share. It was a study that I was looking at as well,
Hmm.
but this is an abstract. They did a whole study about how crack cocaine affects the Black community. This is where I got, but in the abstract, it kind of breaks down what crack and cocaine is. So I'm gonna read it right quick. Cocaine is a stimulant drug that can be snorted or injected and is considered one of the most highly addictive drugs. Furthermore, crack cocaine is the street name for cocaine, which has been processed to make a rock crystal that, when heated, creates vapor that can be smoked. The term crack derives from the crackling sound during the process, and I've heard that, of transforming cocaine to crack cocaine. And so, and this article describes signs and symptoms of crack cocaine and suggested treatment plans that include detox therapy and aftercare, like what I was saying. So that I found that very interesting, is that I didn't know we called it crack because of the crackling sound, right? So that was interesting to learn, but it's very prevalent in the Black community. So from what we've talked about, sis, what I would say with what we discussed, like I said, the encouraging thing is that the stereotype of Black people being predominantly the users of drugs in the United States of African Americans is false. We have worse outcomes with treatment. So that's something, and it's because of two factors, right? Number one, we already averse to seeking treatment or help. And number two, because of the higher incarceration rate for crack, abuse or crack cocaine, we're less likely to seek treatment because we're going to be afraid of going to jail. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. But I do believe that this is something that we do have to talk about and get help for, because we are, as a community, disproportionately affected by these types of things in several ways. So we just got to keep talking about it and get the word out about seeking treatment. Treatment is the only way.
Treatment's on, and taking a
Not church. I ain't trying to be funny. Not church.
Also, it's just not seeking treatment, taking accountability. You have to take accountability. No one made you take the drug. You decided to use it first. So being accountable. And I think the accountability for a lot of things in our community that's happening to us is because of us. And we can't use that as a crutch, that it's this is that. No, you have to take on some of that responsibility. And I think that's where the healing can start first, taking on accountability to.
That's where it's got to start. Accountability first.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm like, even though I was kind of, blasting, now I don't want to say blasting, but calling out some of the issues I had with the 12-step programs, there's accountability in those 12 steps, things you have to do. So I just think they should go a little bit further. I would love to see them say, not that you're powerless, but you are capable of coming out of this. You have the power to defeat this addiction, because that's the ultimate goal of the 12-step program, is to help you defeat the addiction.
And once you're an addict, you will always be an addict.
That's what they say.
You'll always be an addict. You're just one day away from falling back to becoming an addict. So every day it's a process. It's a process.
It's a decision not to use. Every day is a decision. So, well, sis, we a little bit over 1 hour. We appreciate everybody who is here on this live. Miss Valerie Johnson, thank you for your comments.
Thank you,
I know we had a couple of other people. They didn't comment, but we still appreciate you. Please, please, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. This is something going forward that me and Ms. Victoria want to continue to have these discussions. We have a lot of different topics that we want to talk about. So we'll continue to have these discussions on this channel at The Closet Conservative on YouTube. Please make sure. We also have a Facebook page at The Closet Conservative on Facebook. We actually have a Twitter account too at The Closet.
Ladies. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna be getting into health. We're gonna be talking about a lot of stuff that I know that the Black community for a very long time has not spoken about. We're talking about relationships. No, you can't be happy in a relationship if you're not happy with yourself.
Well, on that note, amen. Ashe. I mur you.
Yes, most definitely.
Thanks, everybody. And until next time, we'll see you soon. And like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget.